How's it going, everybody? It's the Kage Little Fox here. It's my channel where I talk about anime, video games, cartoons, most notably Sonic and Ninja Turtles. And today, as you can see by the title of the video, I'm here to talk about some Spider-Man. Yep, that's right. So I wanted to talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day since the trailer just came out, and for the most part, I think it's pretty decent. So I don't want to be overly negative, and I'm not about to sit up here and glaze this either, or go back on what I said about Tom Holland's Spider-Man being the least interesting out of the three live-action movies, or actors, which I still stand by. Like, yeah, Tom Holland to me is probably the least most interesting Spider-Man. Like, yeah, like I would rather watch Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's movies, and I have watched their movies many times over, more so than I've watched Tom Holland's movies. Because Spider-Man Homecoming, it was okay. Spider-Man Far From Home, I was kind of like, when I first saw it, I was like, I don't know what to feel about it. But honestly, like, Jake Gyllenhaal to me, like, his Mysterio carried that movie for me, honestly, because that movie was just, outside of that, that movie was just so bad. And then Spider-Man No Way Home, to me, felt like a little bit of a disappointment. I know it did financially, like, it made $1 billion, which is great, but it just, to me, it was just, that was just straight up fan service, and I wanted more story and more character development and stuff, you know? I mean, it was nice seeing Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland Spider-Man all in the same room, and seeing the return of, like, you know, the like the villains from the Sam Raimi and the Mark Webb movies all in the same, you know, room and stuff. That was nice seeing them again, but it just felt like a lot of the characters was just written out of character. And honestly, whoever wrote the script or whoever directed the movie, I really feel like they'd never actually watched the prior Spider-Man movies besides the MCU ones. So that's how I personally feel about that. But anyways, so the trailer showcase characters like, you know, Scorpion. So that's nice that we're seeing Scorpion again. We haven't really seen any follow-up from Scorpion since Spider-Man Homecoming. So yeah, and then he was also the main villain inside that cartoon, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, where they were trying to utilize him in that too. So finally we're getting him in this movie. We saw John Berthal's Punisher, which everybody's definitely looking forward to. He might actually be the star of the show, or the star of the movie, to be honest, because, you know, just like how he was inside Daredevil Born Again or season 2 of Daredevil, you know, people would have definitely been wanting to see Punisher, or Punisher in general, interact with Spider-Man, because, you know, he got to start from Spider-Man. So seeing them butt heads and stuff, that would be pretty interesting. I'm not really a fan of the buddy-buddy relationship that they got going on, where, like, Peter is referring to, like, you know, Punisher on the first name basis and is like, hey, what's up, Frank, instead of just saying Castle or Punisher or something like that, or I don't know, webbing him up for the police and stuff to prevent Punisher from killing somebody. You know, that's probably stuff Spider-Man would probably be doing, versus like, go home, Frank, set this one out, old man, or something like that, you know. And then you got Bruce Banner, who's Peter's college professor in this. Apparently he's stealing the role of Dr. Kirk Connors, but I'm pretty sure they you know, they wanted to put Bruce Banner in this role because, you know, fan service, of course, to get people to come out. Not a huge fan of it, honestly, and yeah, Kirk Connors should have definitely been in that place, but yeah. But I guess it's better than actually having the Hulk out or whatever in this movie, like they were, yeah. I mean, that's can still happen, that's still on the table. I don't personally hope that he should, you know, turn into the Hulk or whatever. I mean, he should go back to being like that Savage Hulk or whatever, in my personal opinion, but I don't know. But it is what it is. And then you have Mr. Negative. I believe I saw him jumping like body to body in this one scene. So I don't know too much about Mr. Negative, so I can't really say. Then you also got the hand as well, which that's pretty weird that you have the hand. But I mean, I'm not saying it's far-fetched for Spider-Man to encounter or fight the hand, because I mean, I'm pretty sure there's probably comics out there where he has done that. I haven't read them myself, because usually the hand usually goes up against like Daredevil, Elektra, Iron Fist or something maybe, or Wolverine. But Spider-Man, yeah, okay, sure, why not? A little fan service there too, so you know. And then of course you got Peter mutating into possibly Man-Spider. Now this is probably my takeaway from that trailer, where I think that's actually a pretty high point, because I actually would like to see where that goes. It kind of reminds me of like Spider-Man 2, but in reverse, where like instead of Peter losing his powers like he was in that movie, due to like, you know, his life being so down and him being depressed and stuff, or him just losing his edge or whatever, it's kind of like the opposite here, where he's starting to gain more powers and he's starting to get, like, you know, more mutated and stuff like that. So like I said, we might actually see him as Man-Spider. I definitely would like to see that go down. So we'll be definitely in for a ride when July is around the corner. Now, do I think that this will be the best Spider-Man movie ever? Hell no. Hell no. Not even close. But I will say that this will be at least entertaining to watch it for the most part. But the main thing that bothers me is Peter trying to insert himself back into his friends Michelle and Ned's lives, because it shows that he can't really deal with like the consequences or the ramifications, or take accountability for his own actions. This all kind of started when he gave Mysterio the keys to like a global drone strike, got his secret identity outed, almost destroyed the multiverse, sided with killers and murderers over Doctor Strange, and had to undo his mistakes at the cost of his aunt's life and his relationship. And now he's like trying to waltz back into his friends' lives to make himself feel good about himself. Sometimes Peter is just that type of character that's just down on his luck, which the MCU movies have kind of like shielded him from for quite a while, because he's always been protected, or he had Tony Stark in his corner. But now that Tony Stark is gone, and now that Peter doesn't have any more of his connections to Shield or Doctor Strange or anything like that, he's kind of on him, or his aunt anymore. He's kind of on his own. So we'll at least get some of that. So that'd be nice. I know, like in the comics, they've been definitely double downing on Peter's down on his luck stuff, which is like, all right, enough's enough on that one. But he could use some of that inside the movies, though, at least to kind of make his character a little bit more interesting. So what I want for Peter Parker is I want him to turn his life around while trying to overcome hardship. But this whole pursuing his his old high school girlfriend instead of just moving on is just so out of character, because even in the comics where Peter transitioned from high school to college, he made new friends. Peter's supporting cast during his high school era used to be Flash Thompson, which is his school rival, Betty Brant, his high school girlfriend, or well, Betty wasn't really in high school, she was a few years older than Peter, but still his girlfriend at the time, or Liz Allen, who used to be his crush, or J. Jonah Jameson, his boss. Then later on, we get Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane Watson, Felicia Hardy, Harry Osborn, or Robbie Robertson, who were introduced later on in Peter's college days. But movies and shows normalized us into believing that they were always there since his high school days. Now would be definitely a good time for Peter just to move on with a new friend group or something, characters I just mentioned, or one who hasn't appeared, Randy Robertson. I was always saying if you needed a diverse friend for Peter instead of over I don't know, Ned Leeds, which Ned Leeds isn't even Ned Leeds in the movie. Why not go with Randy Robertson and stuff, because he is black and he's the son of Robbie Robertson, Peter's boss from the Daily Bugle. Or you could also have one of Peter's superhero-related friends come into the mix too, like the Human Torch or Iceman or something. And personally, to me, Peter's relationship with Michelle and Ned is kind of bare bones. Michelle and Peter's story to me felt like it was more so puppy love, a mutual crush, and honestly kind of just a high school romance more so than an actual love, nothing more. And if this version of Peter can definitely ignore Michelle throughout an entire movie and move on from Liz Allen, how he did inside Spider-Man Homecoming, then he should have no problem moving on from MJ inside, this movie right here, right? But I'm sure a lot of it has to do with Zendaya and Tom Holland being allegedly married, and I get that there is a level of commitment, but it serves no story purpose for them to get back together all of a sudden, despite his sacrifices in the last movie. And I mean, I know a lot of people have talked about it, but I feel like that's probably worth mentioning. But I mean, if Tom Holland was willing to allow some black dude in some movie to give him some back shots, I don't understand why he just or he was in a play where he was playing Romeo and Juliet or something, and he was supposed to pretend he was in love with this very ugly looking girl that was supposed to be playing Juliet and all that. So if he can kind of lower himself to do all those things, I don't understand why he can't just oh, okay, well, I'm okay if my character finds a different love interest apart from my wife Zendaya's character and stuff. That's just a regular girl, or a attractive looking girl at least. It honestly kind of reminds me of how Peter Quill tried to rizz up Gamora's past deviant in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which was one of the lowest points in the movie, was him trying to and Gamora being a complete bitch about it, even though Star-Lord and Spider-Man are both ladies' men and have no trouble actually bagging girls whenever they need to or want to. And a little side note, it's kind of weird to me how Michelle and Ned are still friends in college when they were actually friends mutually through Peter. I mean, Ned was kind of more so Peter's best friend inside these movies. And then, when Michelle found out that Peter was Spider-Man, Michelle and Ned kind of grew a little bit closer, but they were mostly friends through Peter. So it's kind of a little bit weird to see them like still friends, but not with Peter. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just I don't know. Like yeah, I mean I can understand they were kind of like because they were on the debate team or the science team back inside Spider-Man Homecoming, and that was it. But I can definitely see them just moving on and just going on with their lives and stuff. Since Peter was that thread that connected them together. So it's just kind of more so like, oh, look, guys, we're enjoying ourselves and Peter's not here with us. Like, that's kind of how it comes off to me. Zendaya's inclusion is also a problem because Hollywood has been trying to push her for like years as the new it thing, and everyone is kind of tired of her being pushed like she's like the sexiest, most talented actress just because she's biracial. So No Way Home would have been a perfect swan song because it just seems like her character Michelle has just moved on and she's kind of living her life. She's got a new boyfriend and everything in the trailers, for what it seems. But they'll probably make up some kind of convoluted thing and be like, oh well, she's not yet complete because Peter's not in her life, and this version of Peter will like foolishly like reveal his secret identity again to her, and she'll have this like weird, awkward, mixed reaction at first and they might just get back together or maybe not, but I mean I wouldn't really bet against it. So that's kind of the elephant in the room here for the Spider-Man brand new day news for me. But I gotta say though, at least this live action version of Neo Jake Nightmare seems pretty promising. That was the name of the second season of Spider-Man the animated series, where like Spider-Man was going through these like changes and stuff because he got mutated. So he was going to other people for like some kind of advice, like Professor X. So that led to the X-Men, Spider-Man crossover, and Punisher and stuff. He helped out Peter with that situation, and Craven, and a whole lot of stuff. So yeah, I think this will be like a live action version of that. And I gotta say, Tom Holland has definitely worked out and definitely has gotten into shape because, I mean, no homo, but even like the trailers and stuff with his shirt off, he's really like, oh, he's really shredded. He's really, he really did the work. Too bad it just doesn't show through his costume and stuff, and he still looks like a teenage boy. But yeah, but he's definitely put in the work and stuff. I just wish they could have had the costume look like, line a little bit more with his like physique, but that's just me.